verses 7 through 12. He says, you are running a good race. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth? That kind of persuasion does not come from the one who calls you. A little yeast works through the whole batch of dough. I am confident in the Lord that you will take no other view. The one who is throwing you into confusion, whoever that may be, will have to pay the penalty. Brothers and sisters, if I am still preaching circumcision, why am I still being persecuted? In that case, the offense of the cross has been abolished. As for those agitators, I wish they would go the whole way and emasculate themselves. So Paul says that the Galatians were going along just fine, walking with Jesus, living the Christian life. But now some have come in and they're messing them all up. And he says here, obeying the truth. That just means to live in accordance with the truth, to act in accordance with the truth. And the truth is that they're saved by faith. The truth is they're saved by faith and not by works. And he says, if you let just a little bit of works righteousness in, it's going to spread. It's going to corrupt the whole thing. So he goes on here and he says, apparently there were some who were saying that Paul was still preaching the law, that he was still promoting circumcision. Because he says, verse 11, brothers and sisters, if I'm still preaching circumcision, why am I being persecuted? Now, it's possible they were saying this because Paul had Timothy circumcised in Acts chapter 16, verses 1 through 5. In fact, keep a finger here in Galatians 5. Turn to that, Acts chapter 16. Now, in Galatians, Paul talks about Titus. And he says, Titus went with me to Jerusalem. Here it is in, this is chapter 2, verse 3. It says, yet not even Titus, who was with me, was compelled to be circumcised, even though he was a Greek. Why? If circumcision means nothing, okay, why did Paul have Timothy circumcised in Acts chapter 16 and Titus not circumcised in Galatians chapter 2? And Timothy was half Jew. Okay? So Paul says, if we're going to go into the synagogues preaching Jesus, we don't want them to be so offended that you are half Jew and not circumcised, that they won't listen to us. So Timothy was circumcised. So, let me ask you this. How far are you willing to go to reach people for Christ? Guys, Timothy wasn't an 8-day-old baby here. Okay? Timothy was a young man. I don't know, 18, 20, 25, maybe early 30s. And Paul said, Timothy, you know what? I think if we're going to reach people for Jesus, you need to be circumcised. And Timothy said, ouch. He said, okay. All right. Yeah, you go first. That is commitment. That is evangelistic zeal. Right? And you know, I think of myself. I got my little neighbor, block away. Several times, walked past his house and thought, you know, I should go up and knock on his door, just continue to try and build bridges. And I talked myself out of it. Now, we communicate. He comes over and watches Thursday Night Football because he doesn't get that, stuff like that. But there are other times when I could do something, and I don't. Right? I mean, how often... I was out with some guys. We grabbed a bite to eat. And we walked past a table, and this guy saw us. We had our Bibles with us. And this guy saw us and said, oh, are you guys reading the Bible together? Blah, 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 blah. 2 of us walked out. The third one walked out and said, you know what? I feel like I should invite that guy to church. And he walked back in and invited him to church and had a conversation with him. 2 of us walked out. Why? Do you think, I'm just being honest. If I'm not willing to stop and engage a guy in conversation, if I'm not willing to go up and knock on a door, you think I'd be willing to get circumcised at 35 years old to win people to Christ? Honestly, I would definitely hesitate. And I think all of us would. And I think all of us do. Because maybe what John said is right. Because if we were willing to get circumcised in order to reach people of Christ, maybe we would be a church of 400. I don't know. So, how far are you willing to go to reach people for Christ? But Paul says here that if he is still preaching circumcision in the law, why are the Judaizers after him? And then Paul says, those people who are causing you so much confusion and problems, I wish they would go the whole way. But what would you do to protect your children? And the Galatians are Paul's spiritual children. And he hates what's happening with them.